With all the talk about how things would happen should Joe Biden have to resign the presidency due to his health or any other reason, I'm seeing some posts on social media that I thought I'd address and kind of go over how this process would play out. Now, first of all, should Joe Biden have to resign at whatever time he says he is done, Kamala Harris becomes the president. They would probably work out enough time, like Joe Biden would say, as of noon tomorrow, I'm going to resign the presidency. And around that time, Kamala Harris would be sworn in by somebody, by a judge, obviously, but it doesn't have to be a Supreme Court justice. She would take the oath of office, and then she would immediately from that moment on become the 47th president. And that is all based on history as well as the 25th Amendment, the 12th Amendment, and I think the 20th Amendment as well. So, should something happen to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris would become the president effective immediately. Now, she could invoke the 25th should Joe become incapacitated in some way and not be able to resign on his own or of his own accord. And that would involve her sending a letter to the president pro tem of the Senate, who is a Democrat, whose name escapes me right now. And they would send a letter to Speaker Mike Johnson of the House, informing them of the reason why. It would start like a 4-day process. And then after 4 days, if Joe Biden was capable again, he would submit a letter to both of those same two parties saying, I'm capable, and he would resume the presidency. Should he not, and it becomes an extended period of thing, Kamala Harris would have to submit another letter saying it's extended and what the time frame and what they are thinking about doing going forward. And then Congress would basically hold a majority vote and decide whether or not they think the president would be capable of resuming his duties in the future, or whether or not, they should give the presidency straight to Kamala Harris and just keep the nation moving, or leave her in an acting president role. Now, if Joe Biden is incapacitated in any way like that, Kamala Harris could become acting president by Joe Biden submitting a letter to Congress saying, I am temporarily ceding power to the vice president. During this time, I will be unable to fulfill my duties as president. All my powers and responsibilities would go to the vice president. And this has been used in the past to cover things like hospitalizations, being put under general anesthesia for routine procedures. I think it was, I don't remember which president it was, but not long ago there was a president that had done it because they had to undergo a colonoscopy, I believe. They were put under general anesthesia for a day. And during that 1 day period, the vice president had to do, had all powers should they need to exercise them. And that was put in place basically to keep the government moving. Now, where there is some confusion is what happens if Kamala Harris does become president through the 25th, through Joe Biden resigning or something of that nature. One of the things I'm seeing on some social media posts is there are people saying that Speaker Mike Johnson just automatically becomes the president or the vice president, and that is not what happens. Should Kamala Harris have to ascend to the presidency prior to January 20th, 2025, which is when the next president would be sworn in after the election. This is assuming she wins the election, of course. But if she would need to become president between now and then, like I said, either she would find a judge or they would schedule something. There's the famous photo of they got a district judge on Air Force One with LBJ after the Kennedy assassination. When they knew Kennedy was dead, LBJ wanted to take the oath of office as quickly as possible to continue the role of the president within the government. So that would all take place should she need to assume the role. Whether they make it work with an official swearing-in ceremony like an inauguration. They probably wouldn't be as big of a celebration as what they would do in January during the normal inauguration, but maybe they line something up to be done at the White House or whatever. Whatever they choose to do would happen, however that plays out. But then who becomes vice president? Well, what would happen is Kamala Harris would pick her vice president, whoever she picks. And more than likely at this point, if this would happen, say, anytime soon, this would be the person she would choose also to probably be her running mate in the election going forward. So whoever that person is, whoever they have vetted, she would make that choice. If she's already made her running mate choice, I would assume that she would make that person her vice president if the need would arise. So then what would happen is that name would go before that person would go before basically a joint session of Congress, and they would hold a vote. Now, the way I understand it is that it would be a majority vote. Basically needs a majority in both houses. Well, we already have 51 senators that are Democratic or lean Democratic who would probably vote to approve whoever Kamala Harris picks. And in the House, yes, there is a Republican majority, but they would only need to seat 2 or 3 Republicans in order for that to happen. I think there would be at least enough Republicans to side with Democrats and approve whoever she would pick. Again, this is all if that need would arise. And if they absolutely could not come to terms and could not approve anybody, the vice presidency would remain vacant up until the election. And then when Kamala Harris, or should Donald Trump win, Donald Trump wins, and they get inaugurated in January, their pick, whoever gets inaugurated with them in January, would then become the vice president and fill that role. The only way the Speaker of the House becomes anywhere in that, the vice president or the president, is should something happen to both the vice president and the president at the same time. Or in this particular case that I was talking about, where the vice presidency might become vacant, should something happen and Kamala Harris be unable to fulfill her role as president, then temporarily the Speaker of the House would be next in line to fill that role, should that need arise. But otherwise, Mike Johnson doesn't just automatically become vice president. He doesn't just slide up one spot. The president pro tem of the Senate would not become Speaker of the House. It doesn't work that way. They don't move their positions around. There would be a vote in Congress, like I said, to approve whoever Kamala Harris picks. I hope this helps clear up any of the confusion about any of this, because that's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. And as of right now, we have no need to expect that anything is going to happen with Joe Biden, but we already have the safeguards in place should those needs arise. So I just thought I would give a kind of a longer explanation of how that would work.